In 2026, two types of professionals exist: those spending 40 hours doing 40 hours of work, and those spending 40 hours doing what used to take 60. The difference isn't talent. It's not experience. It's 5 tools. These aren't concepts or demos. They're tools I run every single day as a full stack developer, a founder, and someone building multiple things at once. I work across IoT, cloud infrastructure, mobile apps, and software as a service products. And without these 5 tools, there's no version of that workload that's sustainable. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which ones belong in your workflow and how to actually use them, not just what they are. Most people use ChatGPT like a smarter Google. Type a question, get an answer, move on. They're getting maybe 10% of what it can actually do. I use it for everything, not just work. Everyday decisions, thinking through problems, figuring out the fastest path through something before I commit to it. That alone saves time. But where it genuinely transforms my output is when I'm building something in production. Should I scale this horizontally or vertically? Is there a better architecture for what I'm trying to do? What's the implementation path that doesn't create technical debt 6 months from now? What are the trade-offs between these two approaches? Instead of spending an hour thinking through a problem alone or waiting for a senior engineer to have bandwidth, I think through it with an AI that's absorbed more engineering documentation, architecture patterns, and production case studies than any single person could read in a lifetime. The answer isn't always perfect, but it's a starting point that's usually 80% of the way there, and 80% in 2 minutes beats 0% after an hour every time. Agents take this even further. Instead of me asking questions back and forth, the agent runs the entire workflow autonomously: research, analysis, synthesis, output, while I'm focused on something else entirely. Imagine needing a competitive analysis. The old way: open 15 tabs, read through websites, take notes, build a spreadsheet, write the summary. That's a 3-hour afternoon. With an agent, you describe what you need, walk away, and come back to a finished report. For developers and knowledge workers, this alone recovers 3 to 5 hours every single week. Here's where I'll be straight with you. Claude is where I live for actual development work. Boilerplate code that used to take an hour to scaffold, done in minutes. Folder structure for a new project, set up exactly the way I'd want it, with the right separation of concerns and naming conventions. Claude handles it before I've finished my coffee. Front-end work that I'd otherwise have to context switch into when my brain is deep in back-end logic. It takes the parts that don't require my specific judgment so I can stay focused on the parts that do. But the moment that actually changed how I think about this tool was when I uploaded a full PRD, a product requirements document, into a Claude project. I've worked with tools that claim to follow specs. Most of them drift. They make assumptions, they fill in gaps with whatever seems reasonable, they lose track of the original requirements as the conversation gets longer. Claude didn't. It followed every single requirement. It held the full context of that document across the entire conversation and built against the spec like a developer who had actually studied the brief thoroughly and cared about getting it right. For anyone managing complex projects, product managers, founders building their own tools, developers working across multiple code bases, that capability alone changes how you work. Upload the spec. Build against it. Stop re-explaining context from scratch every session. I'll be honest, I didn't fully understand what Perplexity was for when I first tried it. I used it for general things. The same way you'd use Google or ChatGPT, it felt redundant. Another AI tool giving me another AI answer. I didn't see the point. It wasn't until I started using it specifically for research that it clicked. And when it clicked hard. The difference is sourcing and recency. When I need to understand something I'm about to build, a new API, an unfamiliar cloud service, a technical concept I haven't worked with before, a market I'm entering with a new product. Perplexity doesn't just give me an answer. It gives me a cited, synthesized answer pulled from multiple current sources and tells me exactly where the information came from. No rabbit holes, no opening 10 tabs and reading half of each one, no Reddit threads from 3 years ago that may or may not still be accurate, no wondering whether the answer reflects how things actually work today. I ask the question. I get a sourced answer. I verify the citations if it matters. I move on. What used to take an hour of research now takes 10 minutes, consistently, every time. If you do any kind of technical research, market research, or learning on the job, This is the tool that changes that part of your workflow immediately. Cursor and Claude aren't competitors in my workflow, they're teammates. And understanding when to use each one is where the real productivity gain comes from. Claude handles the majority of my coding work exceptionally well. Boilerplate, structure, logic, debugging things I can paste into a conversation. For most tasks, it's the first tool I reach for. But there's a category of problem that needs something different. Problems where you need a tool that understands the full context of an existing code base. Not just the function you pasted in, but the whole project, how the pieces connect what you've already built and why. I ran into this at Canvas Can Do It, where I was building a very specific GPS feature that trails salespeople door to door in real time, live tracking, route history, accuracy at the level of individual houses on a street. The kind of feature where the edge cases matter enormously and the implementation has to fit precisely into an existing production system. Claude got me most of the way there, but the parts I couldn't resolve, the edge cases that needed something to hold the context of the entire code base, not just the snippet I was working on. That's where Cursor closed the gap. The two together achieved what neither could do alone. That's the actual lesson here. It's not about picking one AI coding tool and being loyal to it. It's about knowing which one to reach for and when. Cursor earns its place in the stack for exactly those moments when the problem is bigger than a single conversation. This is the most underrated tool on this list, and it's completely free. I use NotebookLM for two things that have the same underlying problem: my computer science coursework and software development documentation. The problem is volume. There is simply too much to read. AWS documentation alone is enormous. Terraform has thousands of pages of reference material across dozens of providers and resources. When I need something specific, how a particular IAM policy works, what a specific Terraform resource block expects, how two services interact, I don't want to search through thousands of lines of documentation, hoping the right section surfaces. I upload the specific documentation I'm working with. I ask my question. I get exactly the answer I need, grounded in the actual source material I uploaded. Not a general answer, not something from the internet that might be outdated, but the specific documentation for the specific version of the tool I'm using. For school, it works the same way. Instead of reading through everything before I can engage with it, I upload my course materials and query them like a database. What does this concept mean in the context of this course? How does this paper relate to what we covered in week 3? What are the key points I need to understand from this chapter? It's changed how I study and how I build, and because it's completely free with no subscription required, there's no reason not to start using it today. Here's what these 5 tools have in common. None of them are doing your thinking for you. They're handling the parts of your work that are necessary but don't require you specifically: the research, the boilerplate, the documentation, the planning, the debugging rabbit holes that eat your afternoon. ChatGPT agents run your workflows while you focus on higher value problems. Claude handles the development work that doesn't need your judgment, so the work that does gets your full attention. Perplexity compresses hours of research into minutes. Cursor closes the gap on the complex problems no single tool can solve alone. NotebookLM turns overwhelming documentation into something you can actually query. Free all of that up, and you're not just saving time. You're redirecting your best thinking toward the problems that actually need it. 10 hours a week, 500 hours a year, that's not a small number. That's the difference between someone who's always behind and someone who's always ahead. Subscribe for a new breakdown every week: tools, systems, and everything I'm actually using to build faster. I'll see you in the next one.